Most people think debt is just something you pay back later. A credit card, a car loan, a monthly payment. Nothing serious. But what if debt isn't just a financial tool? What if it's a system designed to quietly control how you live, what risks you take, and how long you keep working? Because the strange thing is, the more debt people have, the harder it becomes to walk away from jobs they hate. The harder it becomes to take risks, to start businesses, to invest, to breathe. And yet modern life almost pushes people toward debt from the moment they become adults. You turn 18, and suddenly everyone wants to lend you money. Banks, apps, car dealerships, universities, credit card companies. It feels like freedom, but for millions of people, it slowly becomes a trap. And the scariest part? Most people don't realize they're trapped until years later. Because debt rarely destroys your life all at once. It drains your future slowly, one monthly payment at a time. And once you understand how the debt trap actually works, you start seeing it everywhere. Imagine two people. Both are 25 years old. Both make the same income. Both start with the same opportunities. But 10 years later, one person has freedom, savings, investments, options. The other feels stuck, constantly stressed, always working, always behind. What caused the difference? Most people would assume income, but often, it's debt. Not because debt automatically makes someone poor, but because debt changes behavior. That's the part nobody talks about. Debt doesn't just take your money. It changes the decisions you make. Think about it. When someone has huge monthly payments, their entire life starts revolving around keeping cash flowing in. Suddenly they can't leave toxic jobs. They avoid risks. They stop thinking long-term. They become financially defensive. And over time, they stop building wealth. Because all their money is busy paying for the past. That's the hidden psychological cost of debt. It steals future freedom before most people even realize it. The system starts early. A teenager graduates school. And almost immediately, they're told they need debt to build a successful life. Student loans for education. Car loans for transportation. Credit cards for building credit. Then comes lifestyle pressure. Social media shows luxury apartments, new phones, vacations, designer clothes. And slowly, debt stops feeling dangerous. It starts feeling normal. That's important. Because once something becomes normal, people stop questioning it. A $700 car payment becomes adult life. A maxed-out credit card becomes temporary. Living paycheck to paycheck becomes everyone struggles. But normalization is powerful. If everyone around you is drowning financially, drowning starts to look ordinary. And that's exactly how the trap survives. Let's talk about the most dangerous phrase in personal finance: monthly payment. Because companies learned something about human psychology a long time ago. People don't think in total cost. They think in monthly pain. That's why advertisements rarely say, "This car costs $58,000. Instead they say, "Only $599 per month." Suddenly the brain stops asking, "Can I truly afford this?" and starts asking, "Can I survive this monthly payment?" That tiny shift changes everything. Because almost anyone can squeeze out another monthly payment. But stacking payments slowly destroys financial flexibility. A car payment, phone payment, furniture payment, subscription payment, credit card payment. Individually, they don't seem catastrophic. Together, they quietly consume your future income. It's like carrying invisible weights every month. And the heavier those weights become, the harder it is to move financially. Here's where the trap becomes even more dangerous. Debt creates urgency, and urgency destroys good financial decisions. When people are financially comfortable, they can think clearly. They can invest patiently. negotiate better, take smart risks. But when bills are piling up, the brain shifts into survival mode. And survival mode is terrible for long-term wealth building. This is why financially stressed people often make decisions that seem irrational from the outside. High-interest loans, impulse spending, panic investing, buy now pay later cycles. It's not always because they're irresponsible. It's because stress changes how humans think. Psychologists call this scarcity mindset. When money feels scarce, the brain becomes obsessed with short-term relief. Imagine someone drowning underwater. They aren't thinking about next year's strategy. They're thinking about air. Debt creates that same mental pressure. And people trapped under financial pressure rarely make their best decisions. Now here's the part most people miss. Debt doesn't just affect poor people. In fact, many high earners are deeply trapped. Someone earning $150,000 a year can still be financially fragile. Why? Because income alone doesn't create freedom. Margin creates freedom. The gap between what you earn and what you owe. A person making $60,000 with low expenses and no debt can actually have more freedom than someone making $200,000 buried under payments. But society rarely sees that. We confuse lifestyle with wealth. Big house, must be rich. Luxury car, must be successful. But often, those things are financed. And financed lifestyles create invisible pressure. Some people aren't working because they love their careers anymore. They're working because missing one paycheck would collapse everything. That's why debt can become addictive. Not emotionally addictive like a drug, but structurally addictive. Because debt allows people to buy a future lifestyle today. And humans naturally love immediate rewards. A nicer car today feels amazing. A bigger apartment today feels exciting. A luxury vacation today feels worth it. But future payments feel distant. And the human brain is terrible at valuing distant pain. This is called present bias. We prioritize immediate pleasure over future consequences. Companies know this. That's why almost every financial product is designed around making today feel easy. 0 down. No payments for 12 months. Instant approval. The easier it feels now, the less people think about long-term cost. And over time, people accidentally sell years of future freedom for temporary comfort. There's another hidden layer to this system. Debt keeps people consuming, and consumption drives the economy. Think about it. If everyone suddenly stopped borrowing, what would happen? Fewer expensive cars, fewer oversized homes, fewer impulse purchases, less consumer spending. Modern economies actually depend heavily on people continuing to spend, and debt helps fuel that cycle. Again, debt itself isn't evil. Used carefully, it can be useful. Businesses use debt. Investors use debt. Homeowners use mortgages strategically. The problem is consumer debt used to finance lifestyles people can't actually sustain. That's where the trap begins. Because productive debt can create future value. But lifestyle debt often does the opposite. It steals future income to pay for things that lose value almost immediately. And many people spend years working to pay off moments that lasted weeks. Think about how strange that is. Someone takes a 5-year loan on a car. The excitement of buying the car lasts maybe 2 months. But the payment lasts 60 months. That's the imbalance. Temporary dopamine. Long-term obligation. And modern consumer culture runs on this cycle. Feel stressed. Buy something. Feel behind. Upgrade something. Feel insecure. Show success. The problem is, consumption often becomes emotional. People don't always buy things because they need them. They buy things because they want relief. Relief from stress. Relief from insecurity. Relief from comparison. And debt makes emotional spending dangerously easy. Because it separates the pleasure from the pain. You get the reward now. And the consequences later. Which is exactly why credit cards are so powerful psychologically. Studies have shown people spend more when using cards compared to cash. Because cash feels painful immediately. Swiping a card doesn't. The brain barely registers the loss until the bill arrives. And by then, the cycle has already repeated itself. That's why debt traps are rarely created by one giant mistake. They're usually built through hundreds of tiny decisions, tiny compromises, tiny upgrades, tiny justifications. I deserve this. It's only a small payment. I'll make more money later. Then suddenly, years pass, and people realize they've built an expensive lifestyle they can't escape from. That realization can feel terrifying, because debt reduces optionality, and optionality is one of the most valuable forms of wealth. Wealth isn't just about owning expensive things. Real wealth is having choices. The choice to leave, the choice to rest, the choice to invest, the choice to say no. Debt quietly removes those choices one payment at a time. This is why financially free people often live below their means even when they could spend more. From the outside, it sometimes looks boring. Older car, smaller house, less flashy lifestyle. But what they're really buying is control. Control over time. Control over stress. Control over decisions. That's the hidden luxury most people miss. Because once someone escapes the cycle of constant payments, their money starts working differently. Instead of income flowing backward into debt, it starts flowing forward into investments, assets, savings, businesses, ownership. That's when compounding finally starts helping instead of hurting. Because debt compounds too. And unfortunately, it usually compounds against people before investments ever compound for them. That's why many people feel financially exhausted even while earning decent money. Their income keeps disappearing into past decisions. Now, this doesn't mean all debt is automatically bad. That's too simplistic. A mortgage on a reasonable home can make sense. Business loans can create opportunities. Strategic leverage can build wealth. But the key difference is whether debt creates future value or future pressure. That question changes everything. Will this debt increase future freedom or reduce it? Most people never stop to ask that. They only ask, can I afford the payment? But financially smart people often ask a completely different question. What is this payment costing my future? Because every recurring payment competes against future investing. Every dollar paying interest is a dollar not building ownership. And ownership is what eventually creates freedom. Here's an example. Imagine two friends. One buys a luxury car with a huge monthly payment at $25. The other buys a reliable cheaper car and invests the difference every month. At first, the luxury car owner looks more successful. People notice the car, compliment the lifestyle, assume wealth. Meanwhile, the investor looks average. But 10 years later, the situation often flips. Because money invested tends to grow. Money spent on depreciating status usually disappears. And this is one of the hardest psychological battles in personal finance. Delayed gratification. The ability to sacrifice temporary appearances for long-term freedom. Most people understand this logically. But emotionally, it's difficult. Because humans are social creatures. We compare constantly. And social media made comparison infinitely worse. Now people compare themselves to thousands of lifestyles every single day, which creates constant pressure to consume, to upgrade, to keep up, to appear successful. Even if it means financing the image with debt, that pressure traps millions of people in invisible financial competition. And ironically, many wealthy people don't play that game at all. Because once you understand how wealth actually works, you realize freedom matters more than appearance. A financed luxury lifestyle can look rich while quietly creating stress. A modest lifestyle with investments can look average while quietly creating freedom. That's the difference between looking wealthy and becoming wealthy. One focuses on signaling. The other focuses on ownership. And ownership changes lives. Because eventually investments begin paying for your life instead of your labor doing all the work. That's the real escape route. Not earning endlessly higher salaries to support endlessly bigger payments, but reducing financial pressure while increasing ownership. This is why some people feel richer after paying off debt than after getting raises. Because freedom creates psychological relief, less pressure, less anxiety, more breathing room. And breathing room changes decision-making dramatically. People with financial margin think differently. They negotiate differently, take opportunities differently, handle emergencies differently. They stop operating from desperation. That's incredibly important. Because desperation is expensive. It leads to bad jobs, bad financial deals, bad investments, bad relationships with money. Debt often traps people in reactive living, but financial stability allows proactive thinking. And proactive thinking is where long-term wealth usually begins. So what's the practical takeaway here? First, understand that debt is not just mathematical. It's psychological. Every payment affects behavior, stress, freedom, decision-making. Second, start measuring purchases differently. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this monthly payment?" Ask, "How much future freedom does this cost?" That single question can completely change financial decisions. Third, build margin before building lifestyle. Because income without margin creates fragility. A bigger paycheck means very little if every dollar is already committed. And finally, focus on ownership over appearance. Ownership compounds. Appearance depreciates. Investments, skills, businesses, assets. Those things eventually create leverage. Consumer debt usually does the opposite. At the end of the day, the debt trap isn't really about numbers. It's about time. Because every unnecessary payment quietly claims pieces of your future labor, future mornings, future stress, future years. And the more obligations people accumulate, the longer they stay stuck trading time for survival. That's why escaping debt feels so emotional for many people. It's not just financial relief. It feels like getting part of your life back. And maybe that's the biggest financial lesson nobody teaches in school. Wealth is not about buying the most things. It's about needing less from your future. Because the moment your life costs less than what you earn, you begin gaining something far more valuable than status. You begin gaining freedom. And freedom is the one thing the debt trap was quietly taking away the entire time.